Okay, welcome back, everyone. As we learn our second daf on this Motzi Shabbos marathon, Baruch Hashem, to start the new week with such wonderful Limud Torah. It should be a delicious week for everybody. It's interesting how, it says, there's a saying in Yiddish, a Mensch tracht und Gott lacht, as Saba very well is aware of. I had initially had all kinds of plans tomorrow to do two blot. I was going to meet twice tomorrow so that I could take my wife away for our anniversary, but we pushed it off because she had a new granddaughter and she wants to be available for the Kimpeter to help her, so we're not going anywhere, so we'll have regular schedule, which is a pleasure. It's a pleasure to be with all of you. We are two lines from the top of Tzadik Gimel Amud Aleph, Amalei Rava L'Rabba Bar Mari. And again, before we start, I just want to mention everybody should write down our friend's name, Yaakov Avadia Ben Freda Rivka. He's going in, Rabbi Kranz is going in on surgery Monday. So let's all have him in mind, make a special effort to have him in mind, that it should be painless, it should be successful, and he should have Arichas Yamim B'Shanim, without any worry from Hashem.
And the low deductible and copay, right?
No, send the bill to Marshall. Now, Amalei Rava L'Rabba Bar Mari, Minoha Milsa de Imre Inche. What does it mean? How do we know that which people say Basar More Nichse, after people that are wealthy, Tzivei Mashach, you can pull the fat. This means that attach yourself to wealthy people and some of the wealth will rub off on you. He also had cattle, flock, sheep and goats, and cattle, large livestock, va'olim, and tents. Now, on a practical level, this means that a person should attach himself to people who understand wealth and either apprentice himself to them or work with them. It's interesting that I gave more than one person an eitzah. If you're working in an office on big deals constantly, you should try to factor into your parnasa that you get some share of the action. And people that have listened to me have become very wealthy people. Other people just were clerks in the business for many, many years and never made anything. Now, this is very painful. If a person says to Hashem, when will he get his? It's a very foolish thing that people do. They see somebody not behaving and they are troubled. Here, this person, he's living the life of Riley. He's traveling to Dubai. He has a vacation home in Boca. He has a home in Eretz Yisrael. And he knows the guy's a lousy husband and he's a cheat in business. And he says, Hashem, when is he going to get his? It's not our job. Get out of the judgment business. Ki amishpat lelikim, judgment is God's. Get out of the judgment business. We see it, even a tragedy happened to Sari Meinu. Sari Meinu was upset with Avram when he davened for a child. He said, Hinei anoichi hoylech hariri, I'm going childless. So Sarah said, Chamasi alecha, I'm angry at you. Yishpat Hashem beini beinach, why don't you only pray for yourself? Why don't you pray for me?
It's almost so good when he says, he's davening for somebody, here it's for bed.
That's correct. If somebody asks Shemayim to judge a person, hu nenesh chila. He's punished first, because that's what happened. Sari Meinu had a taina Avram, and she said to Hashem, Yishpat Hashem beini ubeinecha, and she ended up dying many years before. She died at 127. Avram Avinu lived till 175. Shenem avatoimer Sarai al Avram. Sarai said to Avram, Chamasi alecha, my wrath upon you. Yishpat Hashem beini ubeinecha. May Hashem judge between me and you. V'ksiv ayavay Avram lispayed l'Sara v'lifkaisa. Avram came to eulogize Sarah and to cry over her. V'hani mili, when is there a taina on a person for turning to Shemayim? The Islay Dina Ba'ara, where there's an option to go to a sage. She had an option to go to the Beis HaMedrash Shel Shem. So instead of crying out to Hashem, she should have gone to the Beis HaMedrash of Shem and discuss it with Shem. Amr Yitzchak, Oiloi Litzayek Yosim in Anitzak. Woe to the one who cries out more than the one that she's crying out about. That's what happened. She cried out about Avram, and she was punished first. The one who cries out and the one who's cried against are also going to get their deserts. They bring faster the punishment that the one who cries out, that Hashem should give judgment. Don't take the curse of even a commoner. We see that Avimelech cursed Sarah, and it came with her son. It came to her son. Shari Avimelech kilel Sarah. Avimelech cursed Sarah, b'niskayim b'zara. Avimelech says, you tricked me, you caused me such problems, and all our offices shut down. This is for a covering of eyes. Since you duped me, and you didn't reveal that he was your husband, and you caused me all of this punishment, you should have a son whose eye is covered. And that's what happened to Yitzchak. When the sky in Bizarra, the Yitzchak became old, and his eyes became dim from seeing. It's always better to be the one that's chased, and not from a chaser. It says, Alikim Yevakesh Nirdaf. Hashem defends the underdog. This is very interesting. There's no bird that's persecuted and that's as defenseless as the turtle, dove, and the pigeon. And therefore they're the ones that it's accepted throughout the ages in the Beis HaMikdash on the altar. Because Hashem seeks the one who is being persecuted. Now we go back to the Mishnah. We have a little piece of tricky Gemara here, and then the next parak starts off very easy. So don't get discouraged if it's a little bumpy for a few minutes. Hang in there, Rabbi Yisai. It's a wonderful night of learning.
No turbulence, Rabbi, right?
A little turbulence, but not for somebody like Mark. It's not turbulence.
Did the voice stop Bilam from cursing the Bnei Yisrael? Why didn't he stop Avimelech from cursing Sarah?
Well, that was a very special situation that the Rebbeinu Shalom stopped Bilam. It's almost unheard of. Usually the Rebbeinu Shalom doesn't take that bechira away from people. It's because Bilam attacked Gans Klal Yisrael, he needed to be thwarted. Now, ha'omer samei es eini. We said that if Chatzkel tells Marshall, blind my eye, and he does, he's going to be chayiv. Even if he says on the condition that you're pater, he's still going to be chayiv. But if he says, burn down my field, so Marshal is chai. But if he says on the condition that you'll be potter, then Marshal is potter. So Amalei Ravasi Bachama L'Rava Maishna Reisha or Maishna Seifa. What's the difference between the Reisha that even if he says you're potter, Marshal is chayiv, but when it comes to property, if he says you're potter, then Marshal is potter. Amalei, so he says a Reisha, no one forgives when their body receives harm. Lefisha ein adam meichel al rasha evarim. A person does not ever forgive, even if he says it. You can't take him seriously when it refers to a limb that's not going to regenerate. Amalei v'chi adam meichel al tsarai. Does a person ever forgive pain? The Tanya hikani pitzani. If Chatzkel tells Marshal, hit me, wound me, Amanas lifter on the condition that he should be potter. But does anybody ever forgive his own pain? Ishtak, he was quiet. Amar midei shmielach b'cha. Do you hear anything about this? Says the Gemara, listen, if Chatzkel says to Marshal, slug me, and you'll be potter, Chatzkel could do that. But if he says, cut off my foot, that he can't do because then there's a shame to the whole family. Because the blemish to the whole family. Indeed, that's why it's different, because it brings blemish to the whole family. Rava says that's not the reason. A person might forgive pain. I could take it. I'm tough. But he's not going to forgive cutting off his foot. A person is not meichel when you cut off a foot that doesn't regenerate. He might be meichel pain. Rabbi Yochanan says, no, there's a whole different thing that's going on over here. It's not just what you say. As Marshall knows, it's not just what you say, it's how you say it. Like I could say, Marshall, do you want bourbon? And he says, no. He means yes. Right? Or if I say, Marshall, should I take away your bourbon? Yeah. He means no. It depends if there's the correct amount of sarcasm. Right? So that's what the Gemara says over here. Really, it's just telling us that sometimes a yes is a no, and sometimes a no is a yes. Right? I see Marshall is following this very well. On the other hand, Mark has a little bit of a confused look at him. But that's sometimes a yes is a no, and sometimes a no is a yes. It depends. We say this in Shalom Bayis. The wife is complaining about her husband, and the husband says, well, I said yes to all those things. And the wife says, yeah, but you should have heard how you said it. How you say something is a really big part of the equation. So says the Gemara, Rabbi Yochanan Amar yesh hein shein kalav. There's a yes that's really a no. V'yesh lav shu kein. There's a no that's really a yes. Tanya nami achi. We learned likewise. Hikani pitzani almanas lifter. Chatzkel says, hit me, wound me on the condition that you'll be potter. Excuse me, hikani pitzani. Hit me, wound me. So Marshall says, almanas lifter, on the condition that I'll be potter. V'amaloi chein. Yeah, like sure. So then that means hariyesh hein shu kalab. That's a yes, that's a no. Kares ksusi, tear my clothing. Almanas lifter, on the condition I'll be potter. V'amaloi lav, and he says to him, No. In other words, of course, yes, because that's why I told you. Hari lav shein kein, there's a no that sometimes is a yes. I know that for some people this is confusing, but as I said, Marshall is not confused in the slightest. That's just business. Now, Shiber es Kadi, Kara es Ksusi, if he tells him, break my pitcher, tear my clothing, and Marshall does it, Chai. So the Gemara says, if Marshall tells him to do it, he's chayiv. V'ramini, we learned an interesting thing. It says in the pasuk. Let me tell you the lashon of pasuk. Ki yitein isha re'eu. If a man gives to his friend chamor oishar oiseh, a donkey, an ox, a sheep, the kol behema, or any animal, lishmar, to watch. That's the pasuk of Shomer, of guardians. Now we dash in Lishmar that if I give it to Mark to watch and something happens, he's negligent, he's chayiv. But v'loy labin, not if I give it to him to lose or to destroy. Lishmar, he's chayiv if I give it to him to watch. V'loy l'kroy, not if I give it to him to tear it. Not only that, Lishmar, if I give it to watch and something happens, he's chayiv. V'loy l'chalik l'aniyim, not if I give it to him to give it to the poor. Because if I give it to him to give it to the poor, I never made him responsible as a guardian. So you see over here that if I give it to him to destroy it, he's pater. But our Mishnah says that if I tell him, break the pitcher or tear my clothing, he's going to be chayiv. So it's an open contradiction. So Amar Rav Huna, now the Gemara gets very subtle. You got to take out the Talmudic scalpel over here. Very, very, as we welcome in Ari Bencher, who's joining us, Stephen Burback, a very, very subtle distinction over here. Amar Rav Huna, loy kasha, had asi liyadei, had loy asi liyadei. Now let's look at Taisvus, the bottom Taisvus, and see what this means. Hada asa liyadei, one is where it comes to Mark's hand. Pirish masnisen, where it says that Mark is chayiv, and he breaks it. Shenasan liyadei, there it's talking about where I give it to Mark. V'amalei, and I tell him shmar, watch it. But then I add a caveat. V'im tirtza l'kroya, if you want to tear it, asay kiritzayincha. So there we interpret it, obviously, if I'm telling Mark to watch it, I don't want him to tear it. I'm just telling Mark, watch it for me. If it gets a little torn on the edges, I'm not so upset. The kevin shechos ala chayfetz, since I was concerned about it, shlo yamalei karai, where I didn't tell him to tear it, atsheboli yodai, until it got into his hand, shefkidoi etzlei tchila, I deposited it in his hand, I told him to watch it. That which I say you could tear it, I'm not telling it to him that if he tears it, he's pater. It's excess words, I want him to accept the responsibility, and he shouldn't worry that I might be concerned if it gets a little ripped. If it gets ripped. That's why I told him. However, if before it gets into his hand and I tell him that he could rip it, then he's not chayiv. Says the Gemara, that would be a good shot, except where we said lishmar v'loy la'abed, that implies that it's talking about Amalei Rabba Lishma de Asili Yadimashman. That implies that I gave it to him and I told him, don't be upset if it's okay if it gets ripped. So this distinction doesn't work. Both are talking about where I gave it to him. One is talking where I said to him, watch it. And after I said to him, watch it, I told him, it's okay if it gets torn. That's, he's still chayiv. But if I gave it to him, and I told him, you could rip it, then he's not chayiv. So this is an interesting case. This happened to Marshall about 6 years ago. There was a charity collector that gave him a purse of money and told him to give it out to the poor. The Asal of Pumpadisa, there was a charity purse that came to Pumpadisa. Afkede Rav Yosef Gabe Ahu Gavra. When we said whenever it says Ahu Gavra, it's Marshall. So Rav Yosef gave it to Marshall to dole out the charity. Pashuba, Marshall left it on his porch, and Ganavim stole it. He was negligent. He left it out on his porch, and Asu Ganve Ganvua. Chayve Rav Yosef. So Rav Yosef made Marshall pay for the whole purse. It had in about $600,000, and Marshall has to pay for the whole purse. He left it on the porch. You don't leave $600,000 on your porch. Amalei Abaya, but we just said that the pasuk says lishmar if you give it to be guarded, v'loy l'chalik l'aniyah, but not if you give it to give out to the poor. We said that then Marshall is not chayiv. So why is Marshall chayiv over here? Amalei, so the Gemara says aniyeh de Pumpadisa make its kayitzl. The poor people of Pumpadisa got a fixed amount from that purse. In other words, everybody that had the postal code of Chicago was supposed to get every week $450. So everybody had a fixed amount. And since everybody has a fixed amount, so therefore Marshall became indebted to each one of those people. And therefore, that's why he's chayiv. The Pumpadisa make its kitzlo v'lishmarhu, and therefore he has to watch it for each. He's a personal shimer for each of those people, and he's chayiv for each of those people. Hadron alach hachayvel, hadron alach hachayvel, hadron alach hachayvel. Now we start. We know that if Marshall steals from Irving, he only has to pay what he stole. If he makes a change, then he acquires the item and he only has to give back what he stole. So the Mishnah says, Hagoizel Eitzim, if Marshall stole wood for Asan Kalim and made it into a chessboard. Tzemer, he stole wool for Asan Megadim and made it into a sweater. Mishalim Kishas Agzel, he doesn't have to give the sweater to Irving, he doesn't have to give the chess set, he only has to give the wood and the wool. Gaza Para Muberis, if he stole a pregnant cow, V'yolda, and by him it gave birth. Rachel Tu'una, he stole a sheep that was full of wood, wool, V'gazaza, and he sheared off the wool. He doesn't have to give back the cow and the baby. He doesn't have to give back the sheep and the wool. Mishalim Dmei Parah Medes Leilit. He only has to pay for a pregnant cow, or Dmei Rachel Medes Ligazes, or a sheep full of wool. Gazal Parah V'nis Abra Etzlai. If he stole a cow, it became pregnant by him, V'yolda, Rachel a lamb, V'nit'ana Etzlai, and it got full of wool by him, V'gaza, and he sheared it. He only has to pay Mishalim Kishas Agzen. He only has to pay a non-pregnant cow and a sheep without wool. Zak Cloud, this is a general principle. Kol HaGazlanim, all thieves, such as Marshall, Mishalim and Kishas Agzen, pay like the time of theft. So now the question is, why does it say wood that's made into a chess set? It should just say wood that's planed. Why does it say wool that's made into a sweater? Why doesn't it just say wool that's whitened, that's bleached? So the Gemara wants to be medayik. It has to be a complete shinoi. It has to be made into a chest set. It has to be made into a sweater. Let's see it inside. Amrei, eitzim v'asa kalim in. It's only if you stole wood and made it into a chest set. Shifan lay. Not if you just planed the wood, even though that seems like a shinoi. Tzemer v'asa begadim in. Only if you stole the wool and made a sweater. Libnon light. Not if you just bleached the wool. V'reminu. Gazel eitzim v'shifan. If Marshall stole wood and planed it, avonim b'sittin. He stole rock and he chiseled it, smoothed it out. Semer v'libdon, wool and bleached it. Pishton v'nikeyu, flax and cleaned it from its debris. Mishalim kishas hagzela. So you see that you don't have to pay for even the extra work you did. So the Gemara says, to the contrary, our Mishnah is talking about a change that's reversible. Amar Abaye Tani Didan Ketani Shinoi D'Rabbanan. It's talking about only a rabbinical change, the Hadra. It's reversible. Because Shinoi D'Oraisa, and surely a biblical change that's not reversible. Eitzim v'asim kalim. It's talking about be'etzim mishufin. Marshall stole from Irving already planed wood. And what did he do? Well, I knew what's planed wood in the sun. They're already boards. And he took the boards and he made a birdhouse. Tishinui dehada l'briyasa. That's a change that's reversible. We're talking about a birdhouse, maybe not, because he has to cut it into different sizes. But he just made a bench. So that's something that's reversible, because he could just take out the nails. The Ibai Mishlafu, he could take it apart. Semer v'asa begadim is talking about B'tsemer Tovi, where it's already woven wool. The Shina Dadal Riyaso, because he could take the sweater apart. The Ibai Sasule. And even such a reversible Shinui, Marshall acquires it. Because Shinui Doraisa, and surely a biblical Shinui, like planing the wood. The Tana Bra, Shinui Doraisa Ktani. The Braisa says only planing it, only where it's not reversible. But Shinui Dorabbanan like Ktani. But not if it's like it in our Mishnah, where it's reversible. Where it's reversible, he has to give Irving back the item, because it's reversible. Rav Ashi Amatana Didan Artana Nami Shinui Doraisa Katani. Our Mishnah is also talking about a change that's non-reversible. What's a change that's non-reversible? Eitzim v'asen kalim, wood that he made into utensils, buchani. He made it into a pestle. Dainu shifan, he had to plane it. So that's reversible. That's a Shinui Doraisa. Tzemer v'asim begadim namte. He pressed it into felt. Again, that's something that's not reversible. Dainu shinui deloy hader. So the Gemara says, wait a second. You're telling me that bleaching is a shinui, that if you bleach it, you don't have to give back the wool to Irving? V'libun miyavi shinui, is bleaching a shinui? V'raminu. Now we know there's a din of Reishis Hagez. That means that the first of the fleece of your animal you have to give to the kohen. That is a special. This is not a very well-known halachas. There's only one place in Shas where it's talked about. But the din is that if you have 5 sheep and you shear from each sheep the amount of a mana and a half, you have to give the first shearings to the kohen. That's called Reishis Agez. But as soon as you share it and you make a shinui, then it becomes yours and you don't have to give it to the Kayin anymore. Now it says, remember we're saying that bleach, we wanted to say that bleach is considered a change, and that therefore you don't have to give it back to Irving, you only have to give him back regular wool. So the Gemara says, well, libun miyave shinoi, is bleaching a change for a mini, loy hispik litna loy, if you didn't give it to the kayin, at shitzava, until you dyed it, no, then it becomes yours and you're potter. Limnoi, but if you only bleached it, like tzavei chayim. So you see, bleaching is not enough of a shinoi. Amar Abai like Kasha, Rabbi Shimon or Rabbanan. One is going according to Rabbi Shimon and one is going according to Rabbanan. The Tanya Gazu, if you sheared off the wool, Tavu, and then you spun it, or Va'orgai, or wove it, Einam Mitzdarf. It doesn't combine, you don't have to give that wool to the Kayin. Limnai, but if you bleached it, Reb Shimon Aimer Ein Mitzdarf. It doesn't combine. So Reb Shimon holds that Libun is a Shinoi. The Chacham Aimer Mitzdarf. It combines. It combines with the other 4 animals, because we said that there has to be a mana and a half from 5 animals in order to give it. Rav Amar, Hava Reb Shimon. Both are going according to Reb Shimon. But like Kasha, there's certain type of bleaching that is considered a change, and there's certain that is not. One is where you picked out the dirt with your hands. That's not such a big shinoi. That's not a big change. But if you professionally combed it, that's a more professional bleaching, and that is a shinoi, and therefore then you wouldn't have to give it to the kayin. Reb Chia bar Avin Amar, no. Makes a difference, a comb with the hand. If you only whitened it, that's not a shinoi. If you sulfurized it using sulfur, that is a shinoi. So the Gemara says, wait a second. How can you say whitening is a shinoi according to Reb Shimon when Rabbi Shimon holds that even dyeing it is not a shinoi? Dyeing it for Reb Shimon is not a shinoi. Libun ave shinoi. Even dyeing it in another color is not a shinoi according to Reb Shimon. The Tanya, gazaz rishon. If the farmer sheared the wool one at a time, vitzavai rishon, and he dyed it one at a time, or vitava rishon, or he spun at it one at a time, or argai wove it one at a time, aim it staff. They don't combine. You don't have to give it to the kayin. Reb Shimon ben Yehuda, I'm a Mishim Shimon, savai, if you dyed it, it's staff. Says, well, okay, there's 2 opinions in Reb Shimon. Amar Abaya, like Kasha, or Rabbanan Ali b'Reb Reb Shimon, or Reb Shimon Yehuda Ali b'Reb Reb Shimon. There's 2 shatim in Reb Shimon. Rav Amar Lam Loi Pligi Rabbanan Ali Reb Shimon ben Yehuda. No, there aren't 2 opinions. But the reason why Reb Shimon holds dyeing it is not a shinui and doesn't stop it from combining is because dye could be reversible. Because you can remove it with a detergent. It's fine. You could remove it with a detergent. If you didn't give it to him until you dyed it, potter, you don't have to give the Reishis Agez. That's talking about Bekala Elon. There is a certain bluish, greenish dye, which is called Kala Elon, that cannot be removed. It's a permanent dye. The loyavet, that it can't be removed. Now, Rabbi say this was a really big job tonight, a lot of learning, but don't go anywhere because we're going to learn the Mishnah Yomis now.